Alright, let's begin looking at channel lighting. Um, Channel lighting is a way of actually rendering three different lighting passes in one single pass, and being able to later on in the comp separate each light and work on them individually, even though they were all rendered together at the same time. The way it works is you're going to render each light into a different channel, and those channels are the red, green, and blue channel. So the way to set that up is I've got my simple little teapot scene here, and here's my material. It's just a diffuse and a bump, and there's no specular, and we'll talk about why there's no specular and what to do later on. But the way it works, let me see. First of all, when you render the scene, this is what we get. Just for reference, all these lights are white except for this one. It's got a little bit of blue tint right now, but it doesn't matter. We're going to change the color of the lights later on anyways. So here we've got this scene. Well, first thing we need to do is tell each light that it's going to be either a red, green, or blue light. So we'll start off with just the skylight here, and what we're going to do is we're going to make it completely blue, just 100% blue. And we'll go to each light and we'll make them different colors. This one will be our red, and this spotlight back here, this one is going to be our green. Okay, so now each light has either red, green, or blue, 100%. And what we need to do is remove the texture information out of the diffuse. So what we would do is we'd turn this off, and this needs to be made white in order for this to work. Now let's go ahead and we'll just render that out, and we'll take a look. And here's the result of that render. What you'll see is if we look at each channel individually, the red has only red information in it, green has only the green lights information, and the blue has just the skylight information. And together it's this ugly mess here. But what we can do is we can save this out. So let me go ahead and do that, and we'll just call this RGB light. I'm going to call this one A because we're going to do this a different way in a few minutes. So we'll save that. And the next thing I need to do in order for this to work is I need to get a diffuse pass also. I don't want the lighting in this pass. So let me go ahead and render this again so that I have that. You know what? It would help if I turn my diffuse textures back on. Alright, now let's try it. Alright, so now we've got our diffuse full bright pass here. So I'm going to save this as diffuse. And also, you know what? Here's the same pass with all the RGB lights with the textures. And you know what? This isn't going to be as useless as it seems. I'm going to save this one as well. We're going to call this RGB light B. Alright, let's go ahead and jump over into Fusion, and we'll take a look at these. Alright, let's bring in the passes that we rendered out. I'm just going to open Explorer, drag and drop. And I'm going to pull this version B off to the side here. We're going to use him a little later. So we have our RGB lighting pass here, and our diffuse full bright. And just so you see, if you look at the individual channels in Fusion, you get a grayscale version instead of what we just saw in Max, where it was, the red channel was tinted red. This gives you a better idea that this was really the lighting information from that light. It's just white. It's what we're going to be using as a mask. So here's the just the sky, and here's just that backlight and our key light. Alright, So the way to do this, there's actually a few ways that you can do this, but what we want to do is we want to separate each of these out so that we can use it to create individual lights from that we have control over separately. So let's see here. I think the best way to do this is probably with a background node. So what we'll do is we'll change this to our screen size, and we will make this white. Okay. What we need now is a bitmap mask on this guy, and we'll connect these up. Alright, you'll see it dropped in there. But what we want to do is we're going to change in the bitmap mask what channel it's using as a mask. I'm going to switch it to red. Alright, so now we have just that red channel all by itself with, well, the alpha channel is the same because it's being masked. It doesn't matter, we're not going to be using the alpha channel. So there's our key light. So what we'll do is we'll make a copy of this, and we'll actually make one more copy of this. And we're going to do the exact same thing for these. Bitmap mask on here, connect it up. Bitmap mask on this one, connect it up. And in this one, we'll make this the green, and in this one, we'll make it the blue. So if we look at each one of these, there's our individual lights. Now, in order to make these true sort of lighting passes with textures and everything, all we need to do is multiply this by this, and then we'll have our lighting pass. So let's do that. Let's connect this into there, and then these together, and we'll change the blend mode to multiply. And one thing that we need to do when we do that is whenever you're merging and you use the multiply or screen blend mode, it's taking the alpha into account. It's treating the alpha as a mask. So what we need to do is remove the alpha from that checkbox in here so that we're not using it. And then we also need to make our alpha solid. And why is this not working? Let's there we go. Swap the inputs. I was multiplying the wrong thing. Okay, so we have our background that's going over top of our lighting. And now we need to do that for each pass. So put this in as the background. This is the foreground. Turn that off and make this multiply. Okay, there's our backlight. And we'll do it again over here. We want multiply, and we're going to turn off the alpha. Okay, so here's what our lights are contributing to the shot. And if we were to now put these together the same way you would normally put lighting passes together by additively putting them, additively merging them, we'll end up with pretty much the same end result that we had out of Max. So there we go. The nice thing about doing it this way is we're able to render 2 passes, but we got, you know, basically 3 lighting passes out of those 2 passes. And we also, you know, kind of have the diffuse as a 4th pass that we can work with. We got 3 lighting passes and a diffuse pass. So now you can just go in and control the color of all your lights or multipliers, whatever you want to do, and light your shot basically. Alright, let's not forget about this guy down here, our RGB lighting pass that has the textures in it. This is actually, in my opinion, a lot more valuable and a lot easier to work with. Basically, let's go back into Max real quick. Remember, in order to get our RG lighting passes in that first version, we had to come in and turn off the diffuse color on basically any material that's in your scene is going to need that turned off, and it's going to need specular turned off. If you were in an actual production environment and you had a scene with hundreds of materials, this is not going to work. There's no easy way to override this stuff, and I mean, you need to keep your bump map and everything in there, so you can't just do a global override of your materials. You would somehow need to be able to I guess script it or do something that will turn off all of the diffuse colors and replace them with white, and do the same for specular, turn them all off. So since that's kind of unrealistic, I think it's a lot easier to take, in our case we have two lights that can affect specular, and just turn off the affect specular. Just turn that off for both of them. And then leave your textures, leave everything the way it is, and you can end up getting the same result of this channel lighting with your textures. So let's go ahead and take a look at how you would set that up. I'm going to take the diffuse pass and just copy it, and we'll slide everything over here so we're out of the way. And let's take a look at how you would use this to do the exact same thing as what we have over here. Alright, what we basically need to do is we need to get this pass, the pass with textures and the RGB lights, to look like this pass where there is no textures. And then we will work with it the exact same way as we did over here. It's actually very easy to do if you have these two passes. If you look at the two of these, the only thing that they have in common is the textures. So it's really easy to just remove the textures straight out of this lighting pass. To do that, we're going to grab a channel boolean and we'll just hook these up. And what we're going to do is we're going to divide. And we do not want to affect the alpha channel, so we're going to set that to do nothing. And yeah, I need to swap the inputs here. And there we go. It's that simple. Basically, we're just dividing out all of the texture information, and it leaves behind whatever is different, which is just the lights. And there you have it. One thing we also ended up doing because of the division is that we unpre-multiplied this image, so that's why we have the white background and the little jaggies up here. But otherwise, it's exactly the same as this pass. And in fact, if you wanted to pre-multiply it and make it exactly the same, you just put a mat control and turn on post-multiply, and now they truly are exactly the same thing. You don't have to do this. You can do this later on. You can work with your passes unpre-multiplied and then pre-multiply them later. But otherwise, at this point, you go ahead and you just copy this stuff over and work with it the exact same way. Now, I think that working this way is a lot more production friendly. Basically, all you had to do was turn off specular on two lights in this case. Otherwise, you would need to find a way to override the diffuse and specular of every material in your scene. So I recommend doing it this way. Alright, now in both of these examples, we didn't have any specular on our textures, and it's pretty likely that in production you will have specular on your textures. Unfortunately, you cannot do channel lighting for your speculars. They have to be rendered individually with white lights. The reason that it won't work is that basically, like, if you have any materials that are metals where they actually have a color to their specular highlight, they're not going to react properly. Basically, if you hit, let's say your specular was a bright green, and you hit it with a completely red light, it's just going to be black. You're going to get no information whatsoever. So unfortunately, when you go to render your specular passes, they have to be done individually with white lights or with whatever color your light happens to be. I mean, that's fine, but you have to do them individually. Now, maybe you're thinking, what if you don't have any metals and uh, all your materials have just regular white highlights or white speculars? Why couldn't you just render it all in here? Um, well, you can do it, but it's not going to turn out right. The problem with it is, let's say you rendered this with a specular. You'd have a really bright spot here, and let's say you rendered in float and everything was fine. What happens is when you get to this point down here and you're merging it with the diffuse, you're basically just getting the lighting part correct. You should never. Your speculars are not affected by the diffuse colors. They're completely separate. They're a reflection of the light, so they should not be affected by the diffuse whatsoever. So what you end up doing is you get this really weird looking effect that kind of looks like it's a specular highlight, but it's not, and it's just because the lighting in those areas are being kind of over bright, because it looks at that reflection and it thinks it's just a brighter point of light, because that's the way these are set up. We're just dealing with the light, not reflections. So it doesn't work. You're gonna have to render your speculars separate and comp them separately. They cannot be done this way.